let's talk about what this is. This is GameList. This is an idea that we had months and months ago, and I feel like we should maybe even explain to people how you and I know each other, which is bizarrely strange. I actually did something funny, and I refuse to share it. Maybe for the 100th episode celebration, we can read it. But Kaulin and I met each other via a group Zoom call with Jeff Keighley.
Jeff Keighley, the man.
That's
Mr.
like the
Game of the
lightest
Year.
way to put it. That sounds way cooler than it is. What happened was, about a year and a half ago, Jeff Keighley tweeted in the midst of the pandemic that Game Awards was going to be weird, and they wanted to hear from people in the community that are fans of the Game Awards what they'd like to see from a not in-person Game Awards broadcast. So they gave us a prompt, which was, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, what do the Game Awards mean to you?
Yeah, that was it. I think that was it,
like
exactly. It was
And
something super corny.
So corny. Don't steal my word, because I wrote the corniest thing that's ever been created. I actually went into my sent folder and sifted down to look down to see what I wrote. Oh my god.
Oh my god. Do we want to read out what we sent?
That's what I'm saying. That's episode 100. I am not willing to read out
episode 100
what I sent yet. Not in any way, shape, or form. I am thoroughly embarrassed by it. It is full on, like, dick suckery is what it is.
No, yeah, same. Yeah.
Anyway, we got selected. We were one of the first. How many people was it? It was
like 50 or something, right?
It wasn't 100, right? It was less than 100 people?
No, it was less than 100 people.
By the end of those Zoom calls, they went on for months and months, and they would add new members all the time. That would
it got up to like 1,000 people.
Yeah, and there were all kinds of guests. It's a story for another day, but we ended up in a ramshackle Discord call or Discord server, and there were a lot of people in there that I was impartial on, but there was one dude who was bringing something to the table that I thought was kind of up my alley. I was like, this guy knows his stuff, and he seems normal compared to the rest of the clientele in there. And that's kind of how it all started. You were making YouTube videos, I was starting to stream, and we just kind of started paying attention to each other's stuff.
I remember hopping in your stream one day, and you were playing Kingdom Hearts, and I was like, I have no idea what this game is. I've never played it. I never will play it, but, you know, he's entertaining enough, so I'll watch.
Entertaining
enough. You know,
enough.
kind of snowballed from there. So
yes.
You were actually the first. Yeah, you were the first person I ever watched on Twitch. I never had a Twitch account before. Never subscribed or followed anyone before. You and like Sonic, you two were like the first people I ever interacted with on Twitch.
Yeah, you were doing YouTube stuff only at the time, and I was like, dude, gotta be on Twitch. And now you're on Twitch, and your YouTube's blowing up.
Yeah, and I'm not even putting stuff on YouTube, which kind of sucks, but you know, time.
Yes, in due time. Perhaps this very podcast show will appear on Twitch in the near future. We shall see.
Hopefully. So
this is essentially episode 0 of Games List, and I gotta get our name right. It's Game List. It's not plural. Maybe it should be plural. Like I said, everything is all up in the air right now. We're feeling this out. We're calling this episode 0. This is our rough draft of a podcast, and the reason why we're doing this in the first place is just as streamers, content creators, we wanted to make GOTY lists for 2021, and Kaulin and I are both big video game industry fans. We pay attention to the news, and we wanted to go over, you know, what we were a fan of last year. That kind of snowballed, and I think really the way that this was sort of developed was as we started putting our list together, we were just in Discord sharing our lists and making changes and recommending games that the other might have missed, and it became a fucking nightmare, I would say, to try to go back in time and think about all the games that we played over the last 12 months. We came up with this idea of what if instead of, you know, crunching, basically, for lack of a better video game industry term, to put together a list at the end of the year, what if we spent the whole year talking about what our game of the year list was, and as we played things, we would speak about them. So that's the idea behind it, is that we're going to do a monthly podcast, which is quite rare. I feel like most are weekly, bi-weekly, not many are monthly. But we're going to go through and talk about what we played every single month and have a running list. So this will be a weird one. What we're going to do here is we are going to do the crunch, and we're going to go over what we've decided are our top games of the previous year. But in a week, we'll have our actual episode 1, which will be January 2022, which will have the month in review of games that we've played from this year, games that we've played in general, as well as industry, gaming, news, anything top of mind that happened in the month of January. So that'll be a week from today. I believe it's on the 31st of January, in fact. Perfectly timed.
And spoiler alert, there's not much in January of this year. So
no, my games played this year is quite light, but there's a lot in game news, so it might be a little heavier on that end of things.
Lots of news.
The game list episode 1 may be the news list episode 1. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But without further ado, I feel like we should hop into the main event here.
Actually, Jake, I do have a question. We were going to talk about Outer Wilds at some point. Did you plan on that this week or next week?
So I will tell you that I think the best way to format this one is to just go straight up game of the year. But there's a little asterisk in one of our misses this year because we're both late to the party on Outer Wilds. You'll see at the end is the Outer Wilds Echoes of the Eye DLC. So at the tail end of the show, essentially what we've created is a list of our top 10 games, then a gigantic mishmash of our honorable mentions. We both have decided on our stinker of the year, which is, I feel like we should have better defined our stinker of the year. Mine is like the game that I had the most faith in making my list, but didn't make it because not only is it not an honorable mention, but I am like somewhat opposed to it. It's my disappointment of the year, I guess.
Yeah. That's the same for me. And I actually took off the other thing that I had on that list just because,
We'll
I need to give that game more time, but
yeah. I think everyone needs to give that game more time. We'll get to that towards the end. And then we also have the things that we missed. We're only 2 people. We don't play every single video game that comes out. And there are some things that have made a lot of Game of the Year discussions over the past year that we did not play, but we owe them. We'll get there one day. Maybe that's a stream series. We'll go back and fill in the blanks. But without further ado, let me hit my fancy button here that hopefully works. Game of the Year 2021. The list is as follows. For number 10, for myself, is Unpacking. And Kaulin has chosen...
Before your eyes.
We're going to get better at this. You wait. I feel like I'm like a absolute monologue monster. I could sit here and listen to my own voice for 8 hours straight. So please interrupt me, and I'll try my best to cue you up.
No, you're fine. I was like, I thought I lagged there for a second. I was like, did he say it, or am I supposed to say it? So
I could do a better job at that.
It's Before Your Eyes.
Before Your Eyes. No,
no, you go.
Cut. No, I'm just kidding. We're keeping it in. So there's a weird thing with our lists in that it's not a combined list. We each did our own top 10. So there's some overlap in the way that everything is dispersed. So some of our conversations where something that pops up on Colin's list, say, Before Your Eyes, might be a little higher up on my list. So we may have a brief conversation about it now and a follow-up conversation later. We might get it all out of the way now and then just touch on it later as we progress through my list. We will figure it out as we go. But I also removed from the honorable mentions anything that was on either of our honorable mentions that appears on our list. And if I recall correctly, Kaulin, Unpacking was on your honorable mentions?
Yes, it was.
Let me ask you this. Why didn't it crack the top 10?
If we're going to be honest, it's a puzzle game. And I don't love puzzle games.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it was a really great game. The music was great. The opening title sequence was phenomenal.
Yeah.
But it was pretty it was lo-fi vibes. But it also had kind of like the 8-bit sound to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was very nice. The music was great in that game. But The game, I played it in one sitting on stream one day. I guess whenever I was having internet troubles.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But by the end, I was just frustrated. And I think it's because I just didn't take a break and I just sat down and went from start to finish without stopping.
I definitely understand those gripes. I think this is the year more than any other year where I gained an appreciation for short little like bite-sized games. So I think for unpacking, it's almost that middle ground. That game took me like 4 to 6 hours maybe. I'm also kind of terrible at puzzle games, so it took me a little while to do. But I really liked it. I think the vibe of unpacking, like you were talking about, just that opening title screen to the very end is extremely consistent, and it does a lot of storytelling without having any narration. It lets you draw your own conclusions. I think that, Before Your Eyes, it's actually kind of easy to compare to in some ways when you think about its actual like size and length, but also vastly different games. The puzzle aspect is fun. I'm a big Tetris guy. I like trying to fit pieces together. And it did a lot for me.
That was House Tetris.
Yeah. But unpacking just barely breaks into my top 10 just for how unique it is. I don't think there's another video game that's like it. And I think that, can you think of another puzzle video game that tells a story?
God, no, not really. I mean, just the environmental storytelling of moving and what they're moving.
It's fucking awesome. Lets you draw your own conclusions. Really, really enjoyable. All right, Before Your Eyes, spoiler alert, comes up much, much higher on my list. So let's talk about Before Your Eyes now. I have 2 others that pop up on Kaulin's list that don't actually appear until later on mine that we'll save. But for Before Your Eyes, let's just broach the subject. Let's get into it. It's the first one that made your top 10. Why did it make it?
So the really cool thing about Before Your Eyes, which I had some gripes with it because I had a hard time calibrating it, but it's the first game that's really taken in like blinking, obviously, into your gameplay. But something about the fact that blinking, something that you have to do, something that it's hard to not do, comes in as a gameplay mechanic. And every time you blink, you lose out on something. You can be halfway through a conversation and blink and then not hear the rest of it. Or just something along those lines. That was a really cool mechanic to me. And it felt like my eyes were dried out after playing that game because I was just trying to hold them open.
The conceit of Before Your Eyes is immensely unique. And when I first heard about this game, I was immediately turned off from it because if any of you guys have seen me on Twitch, I go by Jake Twitchin', and I'm a blinky motherfucker. I got some very minor facial tics, and a lot of them are blinking repeatedly. Now that I bring it up, if you're watching the video, you'll see it more often. But I was worried that I would be incapable of playing this game. Come to find out, not that big of a deal. And especially because the fact that you're unable to keep your eyes opened as a human being for an extended period of time without feeling something physically is pretty incredible. And some of the things that it does with storytelling are
phenomenal.
I mean, we're talking about unpacking being unique for being a puzzle game that tells a story. Before Your Eyes is the most unique video game that I've maybe ever played in my entire life. Perhaps we should have set it up. Essentially, all you do in this game is use your mouse or your cursor to point at something, and then the only things that you can do are blink, open your eyes, or close your eyes. And it tells a story in a way that I never thought possible in a video game. And it without going into spoilers, we're going to try to keep this entire podcast spoiler free. This game fucking destroyed me. I'm not a big crier. I probably cried, a handful of times. I'm lying. When it's like a real life situation where I'm supposed to cry, I don't cry. When it's like a reality TV show, I weep like a baby. But Before Your Eyes fucking got me good. I was a hot mess. And the fact that you need to have your eyes open for some of those things while your eyes begin to well up, and when you cry, you blink. You don't think about this. Never in my life did I think about the idea of trying to hold your eyes open while trying to hold back tears. ridiculous. There was a moment where I was sitting there with my eyes open because I didn't want to miss a segment of the game, while tears welled up and just streamed down my like ugly cry like you see in the memes. It was absolutely ridiculous.
And I feel like I did miss out a little bit on that, because I'm gonna be honest, I don't cry that much, right? So Allie is sitting over there and she just shook her head like, no, you don't. But anyways, and this game, it really did like make me emotional. But I had technical issues with it, as there gets to be a point at the end of the game where you're swapping back and forth between places as you blink. You know what I'm talking about. And it would just crash there repeatedly.
Oh my God.
It would crash in that spot. And I had to replay like that 20-minute section 3 times to finally get through it.
It is one of those games. It reminds me a bit of like What Remains of Edith Finch, where it's a game that should almost be treated and played the same way that you would separate time to like watch a movie or a TV show, where it's best experienced with your undivided attention and in a single playthrough. I can definitely imagine that causing an issue, because I did it one take Timmy style and just sat there start to finish. I was worried about, like I was talking about, my issues with blinking. I was worried about wearing glasses throughout the whole thing. It was fucking flawless for me. But I mean, you see me, I got this fresh ass lighting.
And I actually have my entire playthrough on my YouTube, and you can see some very hidden cuts where I had to cut it and just show the third take or whatever. And also the fact that the audio was making all sorts of issues. But
professional.
Yeah, it's, well, I don't know. It's one of those that I kind of want to delete, but it's there. I enjoyed the game, but that's why it's at my number 10. Just didn't hit me that hard.
You heard it here first. All right. Look at us making it happen. Number 9. Once again, something on Kaulin's list that is significantly higher up on my list, as well as a game from me that's on Kaulin's honorable mentions.
Yes, it's on my honorable mentions. Yeah.
I think for Valheim, it was greatly enhanced by those that I played it with. I stream on Saturday nights with, we affectionately call them the fellers. But 3 of my best friends from real life play video games off stream as well as on stream outside of Saturday nights. And this game, for about a month, just ate up all of our time. And it was absolutely fantastic. I'm not big into like crafting games or survival games, but goddamn did this one absolutely appeal to me. There is something about that procedurally generated world and the slow progression that's required to
it's so
advance.
Slow.
It is very slow. So that's the thing, is like we did fall off of it, but the time that I spent with that game was absolutely incredible. What kind of experience did you have playing it?
So I actually picked it up recently. I've been playing it with Rich, Freight Train, and Mate Monk, and Danny.
Your fellers.
Yeah, pretty much my version of the fellers, I guess. But it's really good. I really love the time that I've spent with it, and they actually have a dedicated server going now that I haven't spent much time in because I've been busy. But I would say the first 20 hours of that game are great whenever you're beating the first boss, building your base for the first time, and then finally going on to the second boss. But after that, it's such a slog sometimes. If you don't have 4 people working, you just don't make that progression that you need.
Yeah. Yep. But I agree wholeheartedly.
It's so fun.
But it deserves a spot on my list, if only for the experience that I had playing with it. If you have the right crew of people to hop in there and buckle down and actually like spend some time creating a place to live, a safe haven, it can be a blast. It can really be.
And
good.
that's one of the games that is made by the people that you're playing it with. So, and I love Freight Train and all them. But I guess the game itself brought it down for me.
Yeah. If it wasn't for Evco, Squanky, and Hooper, I probably would never have played that game. But it kind of fell into that category of like, this looks like a feller's game. This looks like a nice Tuesday night hangout session, vibe out and build some shit together.
It's a great game.
All right, without spoiling how far up on my list it is, how do you feel about holding off on the Halo conversation?
Oh, we'll hold off on it for sure.
I got a natural segue into holding off on your number 8 pick as well then.
Oh, I can do that too.
Anybody that watches my stream knows about where on my list Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is. But
great game.
Let me tell you, it's up there, and we will get to it for sure. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade and bring up a point as well about DLC on this list and remakes, which I think we sort of skirted around a little bit, definitely at the start of the show. But nonetheless, you initially had Mass Effect on your list somewhere. Is that correct?
I did, and I ended up taking it off because I didn't want remakes on there. Well, I mean, I did, but I felt like there were better places to put it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. It deserves, and maybe in the honorable mentions, it's an oversight not including Mass Effect there, but it's tough too because I didn't play Mass Effect Legendary Edition. But if all of a sudden...
Yeah, that's a 100% oversight on my fault. I didn't put it in my honorable mentions.
That's okay, because if we start figuring in Mass Effect Legendary Edition, that includes Mass Effect 2, which is like my game of the year 2008. I don't know. When did Mass Effect 2 come out? Chat, help me. Also, we're live on Twitch right now. Chat's here. I'm largely ignoring them, but I love them all forever. You guys are all wonderful. I'm sorry for everything that I've missed thus far. But it is a funky thing with remakes and remasters and whatnot on where they should fall in this list. But with Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, it's number 8 on my list because of the additional content, the remake intermission, the episode Yuffie, essentially, that is packed in with the PS5 version of Final Fantasy VII Remake, which includes the entire beginning of the game, in addition to the base game, which, like Mass Effect 2, was my game of the year for the previous year. Did that come out in 2021? I think so.
Yeah.
I think April. Yeah,
right?
Sounds right. It might have been April 2020. The last 3 years are a blur.
Yeah, it was 2020.
No one's
yeah.
responsible.
It's absolutely a blur.
But that's the problem, is that if I included the base game, because it came out on PS5 this year for the first time, it would be number 1. It's the best game of the decade. It was just happened to be released 2 years ago. But I really loved this DLC. It's a standalone story. It's Yuffie. It is honestly pretty much all original content. It does not really pull much from the original Final Fantasy VII, and I don't mean the remake. I mean the 1997 PlayStation 1 classic. It does a good job of expanding the story the same way that the original Final Fantasy VII Remake expands on the Midgar portion of Final Fantasy VII. And takes a character that needed a lot of development and gives them that development that they deserve. I really, really enjoyed it, and the only reason it's not higher up on my list is because it's just a small piece of DLC. But 7 Remake Intergrade deserves a spot on the old top 10. Have you even played Remake?
No, I haven't, and it goes along with the thing of like, I want to, but I just have a hard time playing DLC. Like, if it's not the base game, I'm probably not going to play it. And I hate DLC just because I like to complete everything. And then when a DLC makes me return, it's kind of annoying. But I want to. I'll definitely get to it at some point. Probably whenever 2's announced or something, it'll make me like nostalgic for this game and make me want to go back for it. But I just haven't had time to get to it yet.
Listen, I get it. I just think less of you. It's no big deal.
I watched you play it for a little bit, if that makes it any better.
That counts. That's something. That's commitment.
And I know it has like the Clash Royale type mini game in there. Fort something. I don't know.
Yeah. Fort Condor. It's really cool.
Fort Condor,
And I'm assuming that mini game will end up in the Remake 2 whenever or whatever that decides to become. We shall see.
Yeah.
All right, up the list we go to number 7. A lot to talk about on both of these. Now we're in uncharted territory. Our lists wildly differ in the center, and there's a little bit of overlap, but not all that much. Now, I think it's worth mentioning that when we started this idea for these lists, we initially shared each other our lists and made some recommendations of some gaps to fill so that we could kind of speak to these games. Now, I am a noted horror video game hater, I guess is the best way to say it. But every once in a while, chat does a number on me and gets me to check out a Resident Evil game. on stream.
And they're always great streams.
That's what they keep saying. I loathe them. They literally scare the shit out of me. But nonetheless, I got to appreciate the game for what it is. Why is Resident Evil 8 on your list?
It's probably like the first modern horror game that I've truly loved. Before Resident Evil Village, I had only played like Outlast 1 and 2, but I played it in a room full of college guys that we were just all playing it together, like screaming, scared in the dark. So this was the first horror game that I played on stream, and something that made me want to dive into the Resident Evil world. The gameplay was fun. It was interesting. I was scared, but it always made me want to keep playing, which is very rare for horror games.
I get that.
But yeah, I think just the interaction between my chat and playing this game and just the setting. I don't know. I think this was a phenomenal game with a great story. And it's actually super beautiful on the PS5. I don't know about the other versions, but
I jumped in and I played the PlayStation 5 demos that they had available, and they were the Village demo and the Castle demo. And I honestly had a pretty good time playing both of them, just from like a gameplay and game development standpoint. I think that they were both very, very sound. I had a great time. Just running through that world. I think it looked really good. The gameplay itself was smooth. The puzzle solving was nice. There is like an air of tension every single time I'm doing anything, because I feel like something could pop out on me at any fucking moment, which is terrifying. But nonetheless, I respect that game for what it is. And all things considered, I played like an hour and a half, 2 hours of Resident Evil 7 for a stream about a year ago. And then I hopped into Resident Evil 8 just for that demo. I was probably in there for 45 minutes. And not as scary, I guess.
It's a lot less horror, like gore horror than Resident Evil 7 is. 7 is terrifying.
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. But I certainly understand why that game is as popular as it is, and I think that there's definitely a lot to love there.
Yeah, it's a great game. It got me into the Resident Evil series, and also, I said earlier I hate puzzle games, but this game has a lot of puzzles in it, and I really enjoyed all of them. I never actually had a problem with any of them.
Yeah, I get that. Resident Evil, I played Resident Evil 4 back in the day, and the puzzles are kind of the game would be boring without puzzles. You'd be doing a lot of just running through monsters, making it an action game, and I think it's got a nice thing. It's almost like, for some reason, I always equate Resident Evil to like Legend of Zelda, which is maybe a good selling point for you on Zelda. You're not a big first-party Nintendo guy, but Zelda does the same thing, where it would just be all action and combat and no fun if there was no puzzles involved. But it's that sort of weird in-world progression where you're trying to solve things with the things that are around you that I think enhances that game and puts it a step above. So I see a lot of similarities there. Anything else you want to add on Resident Evil Village?
I'm ready for that DLC to come out, even though I said I hate DLCs. We'll see how it goes.
That's been rumored for a long time. I'm assuming at this point it's going to be either non-existent or gigantic.
Well, and they unveiled it with just a black screen with like Comic Sans DLC coming soon.
We swear we're still working on this thing. And that was, almost a year ago now at this point that they announced that was coming?
I don't know. It's been a while.
Yeah, but in due time. Now, this is an interesting one for you and I.
Yeah.
It Takes Two. We played this entire video game together. This is like the first stream that we did together.
Yeah, and I was super nervous. I think that was the first stream I ever had on Twitch. That was before
that was the first time you were ever live on any network, was on my channel. Yeah. I remember that. And then look what happened. Wow. By the end of the playthrough, you were already a Twitch streamer.
Is that right? Is that true?
I think so. I'm pretty sure at the beginning you had never been on Twitch before, and by the end of it, you were officially on Twitch. Whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yep. This game blew me away. To say the least. I'm surprised it didn't make your Game of the Year list. I think what this game does, I'm into very unique video games, and I don't think there's much on the table that's similar to It Takes Two. I think that
there's not.
The coolest thing that It Takes Two did was outside of their video game. I think it is absolutely fucking genius to sell a copy of this game with a downloadable copy for free so that whoever you want to play with can hop in on your game. Genius. And the fact that it is, I mean, it makes sense. If somebody wants to play this game solo but doesn't have anybody to play it with, you need the opportunity to say, oh, hey, come over and play this with me. Because regardless of if you play it online or split screen, the screen is split. And the game mechanics are all 2-player required. The only way that you would be able to play this game single player is if you did the Sakurai thing, where he sits there with 2 hands and 2 controllers and plays both of them when he's doing his Smash
Brothers. Use your toes or something.
Yeah, wild. None of that on stream.
Little pigs cam
toe stuff. We'll see. But what did you think about It Takes Two?
I loved it, man. I'm not entirely sure how it didn't hit my top 10. I loved the time we played it together. It changes its mechanics every level, which keeps it really fresh. Every level had like a different theme. Specifically, the clock level I really enjoyed. I don't know what it was about it, but I really liked the clock level.
The clock level had some really interesting vibes in it. Yeah,
super. Yeah, and it had like a slow mo. It was crazy. And who doesn't love divorce?
Easy.
We've all been there.
Subject matter.
Yeah. And it's in my honorable mentions, but I think what it ultimately comes down to is most of my games are just single player focused. I think it's just who I am as a player. It's nothing against the game. I adored the game and like super happy we played it together. But I don't know how it didn't make it. I really don't.
I think what was interesting about this game, and I think that some people knock it for in some ways, but I would never do so, is this game is fucking big.
Oh, it's so long.
It does, when you start out on this game, it does feel like something that's going to be one of those like 4 to 6 hour adventures, and it ends up becoming so much more. It's really mind-blowing how much they packed into this. It definitely is the gift that keeps on giving. For better or worse, I can understand where some people were kind of ready for it to be over by the end, but I, for one, was impressed with how much it offered, and it wasn't just like tacked on levels. I mean, it's easy for Super Mario Brothers to add an extra world. It's just, okay, now you're in a desert and you're going forward. This game mechanically adds something new basically every world that you go to, which is, I think, really, really impressive. I think they did a fucking fantastic job with it. Joseph Ferris, man.
Joseph Ferris, man. In I expected it to be shorter because A Way Out, his previous title, was kind of shorter. Phenomenal game as well. Yeah, I haven't played Brothers. I need to get to it, but
potential stream.
It was a little longer than I thought it was going to be, but it gave us an extra stream or two, so I'm not mad about it at all. I still need to go back and get all the trophies on it. But it was really good.
Makes sense. Nice. Look at us cruising through our lists. Shit's about to get weird, chat. The first time ever in the history of streaming YouTube podcasting content, we're about to talk about at the same time Life is Strange 2 True Colors, Kaulin's number 6, and my number 6, which honestly could have been higher, Cruisin Blast.
Dude, Cruisin Blast.
Do you have any experience with the Cruisin series?
No, not at all. I saw your little helicopter flying over all these jumps and fires and flames, and that's about it.
I don't think I can even really do this game justice. It's one of those, like, if you know type of situations. Cruisin Blast is an arcade racer in its purest form. It is a complete throwback to the old Cruisin series. It's Cruisin USA, Cruisin World, Cruisin Exotica. This was arguably like the 4th one. It actually came to arcades in 2017 or 2018 and has been available as like a sit down driving game for a pretty long time. And it wasn't until the pandemic hit, and obviously they stopped seeing returns on their investment of these gigantic sit down driving machines, that they decided to port it over to a console. Fairly bare bones port.
So this was from an arcade machine that's a port to the Switch. Oh,
so it's one of those things where you're supposed to insert 50 cents so that you can play a race, and then it's hooked up to 3 other machines, and you and all your friends sit down and drive your car. It's like the old school double tap the gas to do a little boost and go off the jump. There's not much to it. It's simple. It is effective. It's fast-paced racing in absolutely ridiculous scenarios. It is just a very pure gamer-ass video game. I don't want to go on too long about it. Chat is already so sick of me talking about Cruisin Blast over the past year. I streamed it 3 times, which is like 2 more times than I stream most things. It also, I think, deserves to have some recognition for having just the coolest fucking theme song that's ever existed. I play it as an intro to my streams all the time. But it is just really good. If you're listening to this and you've ever played any of the console Fast and Furious games, the developers of Cruisin Blast originally worked on those Cruisin games. Cruisin went on hiatus, and then they did the Fast and Furious video games for a few years, which actually play fairly similarly. I've actually never played those Fast and Furious games, and I didn't know they were developed by the same people. But now I want to go back and play those cursed video games and see what's going on. Should be absolutely fantastic, but I'll leave it at that. If you have any interest in the racing genre, specifically the arcade racing genre, check out Cruisin Blast. Please buy it. It's also getting updated to have online multiplayer. That's a knock. The fact that game doesn't have online multiplayer is tough, but the fact that it's a ported arcade game makes sense. Maybe one day I'll have the fellers over to do some split screen racing. We'll see.
Yeah.
In due time. Let's talk about Life is Strange.
Man, Life is Strange. You know, I've said it before. I think I've mentioned it to you before. The first Life is Strange is by far one of my favorite games of all time. I think about it at least on a weekly basis. And I actually never played Life is Strange 2. So when I saw Life is Strange 2 True
Big
Colors
fan.
was coming out, yeah, I know, right? Big, I adore the first one. Just won't play the second. I actually have it digital and physical now, but I haven't played it yet. But anyways, when I saw True Colors was coming out, and she was like, "My power is empathy," I was like,
"Yeah,
oh,
I know the power of empathy.
This game is going to be just terrible, like just awful." But it came out, it got good reviews, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna play it. So I got it, booted it up, and finished it in under 24 hours.
Nice.
Man,
how long was the actual gameplay?
God, 10 hours maybe 12-ish. There's 5 episodes, so maybe like 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours per episode.
Yep.
But it was so good. The characters that you meet, the conversations that you have. Alex is a phenomenal character.
Protagonist?
Yeah, protagonist. You know, she's more than a character.
Main,
but the main, I don't know, man. It just tugs at your little heartstrings. There's definitely some corny parts where she's playing her guitar with her brother at the start. Correction, they're playing air guitars. It is the corniest thing ever, and it makes me cringe. But you know, it's okay. It's gone quick enough. There's an entire chapter where you're doing a live action role play and you're walking around the town pretending it's like a medieval village or something. And it's, you know, it's corny, but it's good. It changes up from the previous stories. It actually includes the town that's semi open world sometimes.
Interesting.
Man, I can't say enough good things about this game.
Is there actual gameplay in this game? Because it feels like a game where it's just conversations and story.
The gameplay is walking from one place and going to another, kind of, and like clicking a button whenever you're near something to interact with it. There are small environmental puzzles, but there's nothing too difficult. It's kind of, I'm trying to think of something to equate it to. It's not that different from a Telltale game.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's really good. It doesn't tie into any of the previous stories. They all remain pretty separate, but there is one character from this, Stephanie, who appeared in the prequel for the original Life is Strange. But there's no like direct tie-ins to the others.
So as somebody who's never played a Life is Strange and is extremely opposed to doing so, if there had to be a jumping in point, would you say this is the place to do it, or do you think that I go back to the first one? Because there's a remaster on the horizon in like days, maybe?
February 1st.
Yeah.
Yes, wait till February 1st, play the first game, and bawl your eyes out. That game was just tragic.
You've already established I'm very into doing that.
Well, it'll be the game for you. I love it. I'm buying the remaster as soon as I can.
Nice.
I'm playing through it, and
All right.
I adore that game.
Potential stream. Very nice.
Yeah.
All right. We've reached the halfway point, and it is time now to continue. Let's reveal where we are at. Number 5. Now things are wild, because I feel like this is a big gap for both of us. You didn't touch Psychonauts, right?
I haven't touched it.
Psychonauts 2, of course, and you chose Hell Let Loose, which despite getting for free, I still have not played. Let me just throw it over to you. Hell Let Loose. Let me ask you this. Would you have known about this video game if it was not free on PlayStation Plus?
Absolutely not. No.
I hear you.
No way.
I hear you.
No.
Me either.
Sometimes I wonder how I got so hooked on this game. I actually was playing it today. This was my second most played game this year. Hell Let Loose.
Shit.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What is it exactly?
So Hell Let Loose is a hyper realistic military sim set in World War II, and you do historic World War II battles, like rushing the beaches of Normandy or Utah Beach or Hill 400 or stuff like that. And it's super slow. Like you move very slow, but it's very punchy. Like you're getting gunned down on the beach, and you're respawning and getting gunned down on the beach again, and just lots of people have complaints about it because it's like, oh, I'll run for 30 minutes because the maps are giant. They're like humongous. I'll run for like 30 minutes and die
all the time.
Yes, it's an online game. There's no campaign. This is like a weird one in my lineup because it's just a pure multiplayer game that requires it requires teamwork because each role has like a job to do, and if it's not done correctly, then you'll lose. But it's 50v50, so it's quite large battles. You're trying to take objectives, and whatnot. You know, there are certain different game modes that are we don't have to get in the weeds explaining them. But it's just a game that has captivated me in how simple but like in depth it is.
Simple and clean?
it's so simple and clean. It's so fun. I've met lots of really cool people on there. I was actually playing with a friend from Belgium and South Africa today that I met on that game.
Today I almost spit out my delicious Pepsi Cola. Today? You're still playing this right now?
Yeah, I played it today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's so good. It's a phenomenal game. I would encourage anyone to try it, but try it with a friend. Because it's difficult to pick up. It's difficult to pick up, and it's slow. So it's not like Call of Duty. You're not going to be rushing into a gunfight. It's such a unique experience that I adore.
It does sound interesting. I'm not opposed to checking it out at some point. It just didn't find a time to slide it in. Probably because I was too busy playing Psychonauts 2, which is a game that... So I'm a fan of the original Psychonauts. I played that when it came out as a kid and beat it. I probably played it through 2 or 3 times over the years in between now and then. And when Psychonauts 2 came out, I was ready to love the game. And I played it for like 2 or 3 hours, and I kind of fell off of it. And it was not on my top 10 list until we started making our top 10 list. And when we did that, I went through and I wrote down, pretty much everything that I played this year. And then as we were kind of trading lists and trying to figure out where things should go and what the other one should play, I was like, I got to give Psychonauts 2 more time. Why did I fall off of this fucking game? And I went back to it and crushed it. It is so fantastically good. I mean, everybody that knows me as a gamer knows that I'm obsessed with like platforming video games, and this is the cream of the crop. I would say if there's one thing holding it from being like a top 3 game of the year, it's that it is very story heavy. It's a little self-indulgent. It's the old Tim Schafer Double Fine, lots of like, tongue-in-cheek commentary on fourth wall breaking bits, but it still hits exactly the way that it needs to hit. It's got an art style that is just to fucking die for. It feels in some ways so similar to the first one in a way that's unique because Psychonauts 2 looks the way that I picture Psychonauts 1 looking in my head. If I were to boot up Psychonauts 1, it would not look as good as Psychonauts 2 does, of course, because it's an insanely beautiful game. But something about modern graphics and this art style, it just plays, man. It is so good. The powers that you learn and the actual platforming itself is super tight, really, really crisp. The cast of characters is absolutely insane. The story that it tells is maybe the least interesting part to me, and I think that perhaps I'll probably regret saying this out loud, that I've maybe grown out of some of the comedy that they're trying to push upon me in Psychonauts, but when all those things come together, it just works so well. It is, I think, very easily the best platformer of the year. I mean, we'll find out. We got 4 more to go on this list. There is another platformer on my list, but this is a very pure platformer. It plays just the way you'd want to play a game if you were expecting a platformer, whereas the other one's got some other things going on. You might know what I'm talking about if you've listened to this whole thing.
I have a couple questions for you. One, I haven't played the first Psychonauts, and the reason I haven't played this one is because I feel like I should. Like, should I, or is this a good jumping on point? Can I go play this game and get out what I need to get out from it?
To be honest, it's a tough ask. They do a good job of recapping the story, but I think the fact that the story is the part that's the least appealing to me makes me think that I don't know what holds it back. It's a funky game in that way, where you will understand and you will enjoy the story more if you've played the original games. In addition to the regular Psychonauts 1, there's also Psychonauts Rhombus of Ruin, which is a VR exclusive game from a couple years ago that I did not check out either. So the recap at the beginning of the game was important for me because that is extremely impactful to at least the beginning of Psychonauts 2. So the answer to your question, the short version that I'm dancing around here, is that you can absolutely jump into Psychonauts 2 without playing 1, and in fact I would probably recommend doing it that way, and you'd still find a lot to love if you're into platforming video games. I mean, you're a gigantic... Listen, we're an hour into this podcast almost, and we haven't mentioned Sly Cooper a single time.
I know,
mostly because it's a dormant franchise for almost 10 years, but nonetheless.
I was actually going to bring Sly Cooper up with my second question.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, that, like, I love Sly Cooper and, like, cartoony platformers.
I think when it comes down to it, if you are a fan of the platforming genre, you owe it to yourself to check this out. It is beyond fun. If you like going around and collecting things and finding secrets and progressing through challenging platforming activities with a little bit of combat, it is pristine. Fantastic video game. Well deserved to break the top 5.
What's the trophy list look like on it? Is it difficult?
No one pays attention to trophies. No,
what?
It's a first-party Microsoft game. This is on a Game Pass, baby. Free.
Nah, bro. I gotta get them trophies on PlayStation.
I hear you. Those achievements are waiting for you. Microsoft is starting to rule the world. You might want to get a head start before you're forced.
Unfortunately, man. That's tough.
All right. What do you say we move on to number 4?
Good for it.
Now, this is the last opportunity we'll have to have like thoroughly separate video game choices, I think, because we're going to start having a lot of overlap as we break into the top 3. But with number 4, we'll let you go with Guardians of the Galaxy first. My choice is Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker.
Okay.
But we'll break into that after. Tell me about Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, I think we all remember the Square Enix E3 showcase that we were all absolutely put on our butt by about how amazing this game looked, right? No, I remember being extremely underwhelmed by that that showing, and all the showings leading up to this release. It wasn't until I listened to a couple different podcasts and read some reviews that I was like, maybe I actually want to play this Guardians of the Galaxy game. I think this game suffers not in the gameplay. I'll get to the gameplay in a minute. I think the game's like a 9 out of 10. It's so good. But I think this game suffers from the superhero porn star type thing where it's kind of like the Avengers game. Everyone is so used to seeing the Avengers on the big screen and seeing Guardians of the Galaxy on the big screen that whenever they see a different representation of them, they get a little put off. They get kind of like the uncanny valley feeling just instantly. So it instantly gives you like that little like feeling of disgust. And it's just what it is. I feel like Spider-Man doesn't get affected by this as much because we've seen so many different iterations of him, and Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and then Tom Holland and then Yuri Lowenthal and PlayStation, everything. But I feel like other superheroes struggle from that, and I think Guardians of the Galaxy definitely did on its reveal. I think people were like, oh, that looks weird. That's not what we are used to. So I don't like it, right? And then from there, it just kind of grew from a bad attitude. But once the game came out and the reviews started dropping, and I finally got my hands on it this past break, I guess, I don't know, about a month ago. Man, this game, the story in this game, the characters, Rocket, Peter, Gamora, Groot, Drax, all of them, they are such well-written characters. There's so much banter in this game and so much dialogue that I want to hear every single bit of it. Normally, I'll put on like a podcast while I'm playing games, but I didn't put on a podcast during this one because I wanted to hear all the dialogue. The gameplay itself is it's okay. It's nothing to write home about, but it gets you through the game. You keep unlocking things as you go through, and you only control Peter Quill, which I really think was a good idea, so that you could focus more in on that than having half-baked other mechanics for other characters. The story of this game goes places. Yeah, exactly, Avengers style. People were automatically put off of this game because of the Avengers, and I hate it. But the story goes places I did not expect at all. It has characters that I didn't expect, but I was super like stoked to see. It's a phenomenal game. I love it. I've got the platinum for it. As many of the games on the list I do. I've done everything there is to do in that game. Yeah, I know, right? crazy. Actually, my top 5, 6 out of my 10 games I have the platinum on.
Jesus Christ.
And a couple of those are on Xbox and PC. So
we'll get to it later, but I actually got my first platinum trophy with one of the games that's on this list. You did. And it's my first and only platinum trophy or achievement or any game that I've ever 100% completed, which is big.
I'm proud of you.
I gotta say, I think I owe Guardians of the Galaxy more time. I streamed about an hour and a half to 2 hours of Guardians of the Galaxy with the fellers, in fact, and perhaps it was the wrong environment for me to check that game out because I mostly focused on gameplay, which was okay. The banter was starting to hit for me, but there was a lot going on that I wasn't vibing with. And it's interesting because I think there were a lot of people that expected the game to play out that way and were pleasantly surprised the same way that you are, because I would call this game, honestly, maybe this is an incorrect judgment to pass on it, but would this be like the sleeper hit of the year? I think everyone pegged this game as a 7 out of 10, and it ended up coming out to pretty much like 8.5s and 9s. Like, people love this game. And didn't expect to. I think it was definitely a pleasant surprise for a lot of the people that decided to give it the time of day. And I think that in addition to the people that were already willing to do so, once the buzz got around that this thing was actually something pretty special, it got kind of a second wind. And it's one of those games where people were impartial on it for quite a while. And then once it actually dropped, anybody that actually progressed through the game feels the same way as you. So didn't make my list, didn't make my honorable mentions, and I tried to give it a fair shake, but maybe I need to go back to it. I'm not opposed to that game. It's not something where I'm like, I'm never playing that again, which is a lot of games that I play.
And I also have to say, like, the first 3 to 4 hours are the most boring. It picks up after that. But this definitely was a sleeper hit of the year. I mean, it got down to like $30 a couple weeks after releasing.
That's when I grabbed it.
But it's definitely worth it. 100%
Yeah.
worth it. It's a phenomenal game, and I hope you play it so we can talk about it.
Perhaps in a future episode. But for now, it's fucking monologue time, baby. Now, we're officially in this could have been Game of the Year territory. And the problem with Final Fantasy XIV that you'll see not just here, but I think probably industry-wide, is it's nearly impossible to get an impartial review of this video game. Anybody that makes it to Endwalker, which is the 4th expansion for Final Fantasy XIV, a game that's base version is honestly a remake, brand new version of the original game. It's a mess. Do your history lesson on Final Fantasy XIV, you'll know what I'm speaking about. But nonetheless, this game has like a 200 plus hour requirement to even scratch the surface of. You will not start seeing Endwalker content until you've progressed through the entirety of the story of A Realm Reborn, Heavensward, Stormblood, and Shadowbringers. I think that's all of them, and the base game. That being said, anybody that's reviewing it has already put in such a time commitment that they're probably into it. Even at these big, gaming establishments and companies and corporations, the people that are hired to review it are people that play Final Fantasy XIV. So it's tough to give an unbiased opinion of. If you don't like MMOs, this isn't the video game for you. That is also to say that if you don't like MMOs, if you're not completely opposed to them, or if you've never checked one out before, it's arguably the best point of entry for this type of video game. It is a fantastic payoff to a 10-year video game development cycle. It hits story points that you could not imagine. It introduces new classes that are some of the best out of all that have been put out, and it comes with quality of life enhancements for a game that everybody already loves. I will try my best not to go any further. Just know that I could very easily speak about this game for hours and hours, and I think it is worth mentioning that I didn't even start in earnest Final Fantasy XIV's. I didn't progress through the base of the game until the beginning of 2021, at which point I progressed through all of those 200-hour requirements of all of those expansions to get to Endwalker for launch so that I could enjoy it along with everybody. And my playtime as of recording right now for Final Fantasy XIV is 1,459 hours.
What?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was like, my eyes were glazed over as you were talking about it. But when you said that hour count,
I need to look at that again on Steam.
1,459.9
hours. So it's actually 1,455 hours. It is a very, very good video game. And if you're in the midst of a pandemic where it's safer to be inside than it is to go outside, it sure is a wonderful place to sink some fucking time. That being said, not my game of the year. It is easily the game that I've played the most in my life, though.
Oh my god, dude! You could 100% Dying Light 2-3 times in that amount of time.
Yes, but only 3 times.
Oh my god, that's okay. Okay, well,
that's next month.
My question for you: why? What made you look at this game and say, "Yeah, I want to dump 1,400 hours into this"? Like what?
Nothing made me say that. I did not know that it would become what it is in my life. But I think with Endwalker, it's just representation of a game that came out this year, an expansion that came out this year, which all intents and purposes is its own full game, obviously time commitment wise and story wise. But what it really boils down to is I'm a Final Fantasy fan, and this was kind of the one that got away. Or I had played Final Fantasy. I discovered Final Fantasy around Final Fantasy X, and then went back and did my homework and played some of the great 7, 8, 9, 6, 1 for a little bit, Tactics, things along those lines. And then I followed the story. So I skipped 11, the first MMO in the Final Fantasy series, and I said, nope, that's not for me. I played 12, I played 13, I skipped 14, played 15, and I anxiously anticipate Final Fantasy 16, but 14 was the one that I was kind of like, I don't think I want to play an MMO. I had played World of Warcraft enough to know that I was into it, but not that into it. Even in all my years playing WoW, I played not nearly as much as I've played Final Fantasy 14 in the last year and a half. So the answer is being a Final Fantasy fan, and from an MMO standpoint, there is more to enjoy in this compared to other ones because it does play out, especially expansion and story-wise, like a regular Final Fantasy game or a traditional JRPG. You have a main character that you create, voiceless protagonist. You have a party of characters that are defined for you that play different roles, and then you can optionally progress through the dungeons with other people. But the sense of community, the fact that I joined a FC, which is a free company, which is like a guild in Warcraft, added a lot to it, met a bunch of cool people from around the world, and just really sunk my time into it. I didn't expect it to do to me what it did. And I still play it, honestly, since Endwalker. I did a lot of prep for Endwalker. I played this game, obviously, for 1,000 hours. And then once Endwalker came out, I had started to fall off until Endwalker came, and then I powered through that story again. And since then, I've started to fall off again. I think that I might end up playing it less this year than I did last year. I would hope. But
oh no, less than 1,400
whatever's
hours.
Next for Final Fantasy 14 is a shoo-in for me. But just a ridiculously unique video gaming experience. Can't recommend it enough.
I just want to say, I hope that one day I can love a video game that much to put 1,400 hours into it.
I didn't know it was possible. It is out of...
yeah, that's insane.
Anybody that knows me knows that I'll play a game for 40 minutes on stream and get sick of it and start something else. The fact that I put in the time is unique to this video game for sure.
I've probably put about that much into Skyrim on all my playthroughs over the years, but
at least
I don't have a timer for it. Yeah, I'm just running around talking to Hilda for hours. I don't know.
Yeah. The only other game that comes close for my Steam playtime is Risk, like the board game Risk. In the
Risk
past year,
great,
that didn't come out this year. That came out in God knows when, early 1900s. I don't know. Risk historians, please correct me in chat or in the comments. Who could tell? Let's move on. We're in our top 3, baby. We're fucking moving.
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right. Now we're going to circle back a little bit here because there's some retreading. Before Your Eyes landed at number 3 for me. I already talked about how it devastated me in the best of possible ways, so I'm going to let you just take it away with Deathloop. Let me tell you what I know about Deathloop. Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
I know I've talked for Final Fantasy for about 10 minutes now, but I want to keep
It's okay. I'm waking up from your Final Fantasy talk now.
Yeah. Deathloop is developed by Arcane, which is one of your favorite video game developers, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Is it your favorite game of all time? Dishonored?
No, not my favorite. My second favorite. I would have to put them in series. Like my first favorite series is Sly Cooper. My second favorite series is Dishonored. Yeah.
And this is at its core a time loop game that is different than what Arcane has done in the past. They did not have the time loop thing going on, correct?
Yeah, correct. They were much more linear levels. You weren't revisiting places as much as you are now. Much more assassin-like than Guns A-Blazing.
Got it. And this time around, it was developed for PlayStation 4 exclusively, despite in the middle of its development, it was purchased by Microsoft. So future of Deathloop is question mark?
Yeah, so it was PlayStation made a deal with Bethesda. Well, I should say Arcane Lyon, but Bethesda, they're owned by Bethesda. That Deathloop would be a PS5 and PC exclusive, so a PS5 console exclusive. And then a couple months before it came out, they were like, "Hey, actually, we're gonna buy you." But Microsoft just up and buys Bethesda for what?
The classic Microsoft
$7 billion? Yeah, classic. God,
crazy. So why does it crack the top 3, and how does it compare to your favorite Arcane projects?
Well, it's a little bit cheating, honestly, just because Deathloop at its core is Dishonored. The powers, the abilities that you have, they're almost ripped directly out of Dishonored. There's a couple different ones. The art style, while it's not directly like Dishonored, I don't know, like the graphic sheen to it. I don't even know how to explain it. It just has so much Dishonored DNA, and I adore Dishonored. But on its own, it stands on its own 100%. Yet again, I say I hate puzzle games, but this entire game is a puzzle of trying to figure out how to solve the loop. But thankfully it keeps track of their like lines tracing from one clue to the next of what to do and exactly where to go next. So it kind of guides you, which I appreciate because I didn't want to go through it. Because there are 4 times of the day: morning, noon, afternoon, and evening. And there are 4 locations. So technically there are 16, well, roughly 16 locations that you can go to based on time of day. And certain clues are in certain places and puzzles are solved in certain places at certain times. And your end goal is to line up all of the, I forgot what they're called. I don't know, all of the bosses. Yeah, sure. Your goal is to line them all up to get them all in one go, to kill them all in one go. Why you can't do that at the start is because you might kill someone in the beach in the morning, but whenever you go to the cliffside, it automatically changes to afternoon. So while you were going to the cliffside, maybe they went back to the beach, right? So you have to put things into play to get them all lined up to where you can get them in one day and then break the loop. The gameplay is great. The story is really good up until the very end, and it kind of falls short in the last minute, like literally the last minute.
Weird.
There are hints.
Don't say why, but okay.
That's no. It's not the worst. It's not the worst thing ever. But there are hints that it takes place in the same universe as Dishonored, so that excites me because they were gonna like end Dishonored. Like evidently the last little standalone expansion was its own thing, and that was it. But it does have hints that it takes place in the universe of Dishonored, so like that's hopeful.
It looks it's just visually distinct from Dishonored, though.
Yeah,
but it's a game it's got some fucking visual flair, if I do say so myself. It looks pretty.
Yeah, the like the 60s retro style. It's definitely extremely unique, very pretty, but I don't know, something I guess you can just kind of see in like maybe just me, like in the landscape and the architecture. I can just see the Dishonored influence. And even in that Dishonored influence, Dishonored was influenced by Half-Life, so we're really seeing Half-Life influence going through here. But it's such a phenomenal game. Yet again, I have the platinum on it. I enjoyed every second of it. It's multiplayer, so it's kind of multiplayer. You can invade people and try to kill them, and they can invade you. That's also part of the ripple. Is Juliana's constantly.
Cool,
yeah, Juliana could show up at any moment and just ruin you and kill you, and you have to restart the loop. But it's kind of a roguelike. Kind of. I would say it has enough DNA of a roguelike to consider it one. But man, it's so good. I love it.
How long did it take you for the platinum?
Maybe 20-ish hours. Not too long. It wasn't obnoxiously long.
Not so bad. I mean, it's not like 1,400 hours or anything, but it sounds like you got a lot out
of it. No. I could only platinum that, 5 times 14, so like right. 230. I don't know.
Yeah. Different accounts, spread it out. Yeah. Nice. Deathloop, honestly, is a really big miss for me. It is. I'm more interested in that than I am in the Dishonored series, and I have a lot of respect for Arcane. I listened to an interview with the developers of Deathloop, and they talked a little bit less about Deathloop, less about Dishonored in particular, but more just about their studio and their philosophy of like how they create video games. In this interview, I think it was a Min-Max interview where he kind of dissed Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for some of their design, which is like a game that everybody regards as like the best designed video game of all time. And he brought up some very valid concerns about the way that game was structured, and I thought it was extremely insightful, and it made me want to check out their work. So Deathloop is one that I'll get to.
Yeah.
In due time.
And I will say it's at 3 because I was expecting Dishonored 3, right? And that's not what I got. I got Deathloop. And I love it. But it's not Dishonored, and that's not its fault. But I love Dishonored so much.
I get it. I definitely get it. It is certainly on my radar, and it remains to be played. But I think in the near future, I will probably get to it, and we'll probably talk about it on the show. I feel like it's going to be exciting going forward as we do more of these episodes of, you know, the episodes that we do in the future will be structured even more loosely than what we're doing here today. And a lot of it is going to be a casual conversation of what we've been playing. And I'm excited for us to fill some of the gaps that each of us have in each other's favorite games. And Deathloop is one that I could see myself getting to this year, just so I can have a nice spoiler-filled discussion with you on how I saw it all play out. So looking forward to it. What do you say? Number 2, the penultimate choices of Game of the Year?
Penultimate.
All right.
I love that word.
Shit's getting weird. That's one of my favorite words. Ask anybody in my chat. They hate it when I say it.
I say it a lot at work, and there's a girl there that hates when I say it.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So now, some of those conversations that we skipped earlier will be had.
Starting
with Halo
you go
Infinite.
for it.
Halo Infinite. What is your history with Halo?
I got a 360 in 2013-ish.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time I had like that generation of consoles. Played through all the Halos that were out at that time. And then a couple of years later, when I finally got a 1, I played through Halo 5. And I love Halo. I love Halo 4 specifically. That is my all-time favorite.
You can't see, but I'm making a stink face right now.
I can't see. I love Halo 4 though. It tells the best story out of all of them. I stand by that. The story between Cortana and Master Chief. That's what's important. Yeah, I love Halo, but I've never been big into multiplayer Halo. I only got into multiplayer in Infinite, and I actually haven't played in quite a while. I'm still stuck like halfway through the Battle Pass.
Got it. I mean, it's an interesting history with Halo, and I feel like it makes sense why it came in where it did, which is, I believe, number 9 on your list of Game of the Year.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah. And it's number 2 for me, but my history with Halo is launch day of the original Xbox. And from then, it has been a absolute, yes indeed, a love affair with Halo multiplayer, starting with Halo 1 split screen and at LAN parties with friends, to Halo 2 and the introduction of Xbox Live into that ecosystem. Halo 3 is maybe my most, I would say it's probably right behind Final Fantasy XIV, the game that I've put the most hours to in this world. Halo 4 and 5, I have less than 15 hours on each of them. I want to say like my playtime is like 12 hours for Halo 4, including multiplayer, and less than 10 for Halo 5. So I was really not into it. I played some Reach, I played some ODST, big into the Halo series, but tough to not call the last decade since 343 took over a bit of a fall from grace. And let me tell you, what a return to form. They finally got it right after taking their time with this one and delaying it a full year, and still, honestly, all things considered, number 2 game of the year is still a bit of an unfinished video game. The parts that we got do show very healthy signs of life, I'll tell you that much. The multiplayer is incredible. The campaign is the most I've ever cared about a Halo campaign, not story-wise, but just gameplay-wise. The grappling hook, goes without saying, is just absolutely
great,
fantastic introduction into the Halo universe. I feel like I wouldn't be able to play the old Halo campaigns anymore without thinking about how much I missed my grappling hook. But even the multiplayer itself, which I get all the hubbub, there's a lot of issues with it so far. I actually maxed the Battle Pass recently in the last month or so. Game's only been out for a couple months, and it's the first time I've maxed any type of like Battle Pass since like seasons like 1 or 2 of Apex Legends a few years ago. So it really did grab me. I'm not a very skilled gamer. Anybody that watches my streams or knows me outside of this little show that we're doing here will tell you that very, very quickly. But nonetheless, it was nice to dig into a game that had some nice fluid gameplay to get accustomed to and really learn and put my time into. Again, I'm probably mentioning this for the third or fourth time on this show in particular, but it's tough to grab me. It's tough to really have me sink my teeth into a game. It's a real min-max situation. No, minimum or maximum. Yeah, I guess that plays. I'll either check out a game for an hour or sink hundreds of hours into it. And this is already a 100-plus hour game for me, which is more than I can say for the last few Halos. So it's just really nice to have Halo back in my life. The multiplayer is sound. The campaign was fun. I'm excited to see what comes next, because right now it's in a pretty stagnant state. You can tell that they got as much of the game out as they could at the time frame that they had promised, after delaying and having issues and cutting content. And even then it came into some kind of more questionable reviews and some gripes with the systems and the way that you unlock things and the battle pass issues. And they seem to have rectified that by kind of pushing everything that they had set up for the first 6 months of this game to the front. So now it feels like we're getting everything that they have, and it's a little bit stagnant right now. I think everyone's kind of waiting to see what's next. I'm hoping that they have a real knockdown, drag-out showing for Season 2 and the launch of online co-op and all that. So I'm excited to see what 2022 has in store for Halo Infinite, but if I'm judging this game on the bones of what they've created and as something that's supposed to exist for potentially a decade of gameplay and expansions and online multiplayer, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree with what you said. My main attraction to this game, since I'm not a huge multiplayer guy, is the story. And personally, I really liked where they were going with the story in 4 and 5. I think 5 cut short too early. I think they should have extended that a little bit more to, I don't know, evolve what they were working on.
Okay.
I feel like they took the easy way out and was like a dog with its running away with its tail tucked between its legs. With the way they handled the story in this game, I liked the weapon. I liked Master Chief. He felt human. He felt great. It was great. But I don't like the way they handled Cortana. I don't want to get into spoilers with it, but they handled Cortana off screen and we got to see the aftermath.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that at all. They just said, you know what, Cortana, she'll be in a graphic novel in a year from now.
yeah. Fall of Reach.
Yeah, and it's like for 5 games, Cortana has been one of the 2 main characters, right? It's been Chief and Cortana since the start, and they just solved that off screen. I don't know. I wasn't a fan of it, but I love the gameplay. Yeah, I love the gameplay. I love the story leading up to the resolution of Cortana. The weapon was cool. She pretty much is Cortana. And the Banished were all right. I personally, I kind of liked the Guardians and stuff.
I've found the Banished to be indistinguishable from one another. I didn't know who was Tremonius and who was Balthazar or
Escharum or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. I couldn't. I think, and that's like the big. It's cool that this game fell on our lists in different spots, but made both top 10 lists for such drastically different reasons. Because in the nicest way possible, because I know a ton of other people share your opinions and they like the story elements of that. That is like all of the I don't care stuff of Halo to me. But the fact that it was passable for you and is actually, halfway decent means that, at least in some ways, it's hitting it on all fronts. So Halo Infinite, very solid.
Master Chief, whenever he gets in his feels, is the best. It's pretty great.
Master Chief when he's 4-shotting fools with the BR and sticking people in the face. That's when Master Chief is the best. And grappling around an open world.
God, that grapple is so good.
It's time to get to one of my big misses of the year. I feel even more guilty about this one than I do Deathloop.
Yep.
I know what you're saying, but Jake, another Skyrim mod.
No, God, that is. Okay, so I have my my notes for this that I kind of pulled up. I actually haven't been using them, but the first sentence for the notes for this game is Skyrim mod is such an insult to this game, period. So, this game, I actually checked out. Yeah, Forgotten City. I actually checked out the Skyrim mod recently, and it's a very different game. It holds the same DNA, but it's a very different game. It doesn't have the ancient Rome aesthetic type thing to it. Man, this game, I need to stop saying I hate puzzle games.
I feel like perhaps something that we'll be better at in the future is assuming people know nothing about these games. What the fuck is it?
So, The Forgotten City is a game that at one point started off as a Skyrim mod. It was like the highest rated, highest downloaded mod ever or something like that. I don't quote me on that. I could be very wrong. But it was a very popular mod, like millions and millions of downloads. But pretty much what it is, the main theme is you go to a city and I'm now explaining the actual game and not the mod. So you go to a forgotten city, great title. And there are people there. I think there's like 20 people there ish. And they all live by one rule. If one sin, the many are punished for the sins of the one, or something along those lines. So pretty much, if there's a person that's gonna sin, they know someone's gonna sin soon, and your job is to find out who is going to sin, because when someone sins, they all get turned to gold. They get like these gold warriors come out and shoot them and turn them to gold. So they you're trying to figure out from the start who is going to sin. So you have to use like social deduction and the time loop mechanic to figure out who's going to sin. So whenever you sin or someone else sins, you get sent back to the beginning. You have to kind of like run to a portal to get sent back to the beginning of the day. And the progress that you made, a choice that was really good was the very first person that you talked to out of the portal. If you made progress in the previous day, you can just tell him and he'll automatically make that progress for you. So you don't have to do the same thing.
That's a cool way to handle it.
Every time. Yeah, you can do that and continue to investigate other areas. It's a very, very good, like 5-hour experience. It's not very long. Truthfully, it doesn't have much replay value, but there are like 4 different endings. I also have the platinum on this, by the way. There are like 4 different endings. Yeah, each from different sources. It's a puzzle game, and I keep saying I hate puzzle games, but Squanky's right. I think as long as the puzzle game is a time loop, I think I like it. But it's also a game that's hard to talk about without giving away spoilers for stuff. So I don't want to give any exact examples of gameplay stuff, I guess. But it's really good. It's a phenomenal game.
Yep.
I love it. I bought it for like $20 and here it is at the top of my game of the year list, and it's worth every penny I spent on it and more. I'd pay $60 for it.
That's awesome. I really think it seems like something that I'd be into, and length, not so bad, right? Isn't that the case?
No. Yeah, the length is, like 4 to 5 hours. If I think I did it in 8 completionist with all the trophies and stuff. So
yeah, come on, I can sacrifice a day. I'll get Forgotten City done. Awesome.
You should.
All right.
It's also on Game Pass, I think. I could be wrong.
It is on Game Pass.
Yeah.
Forgive me, City, for I have sinned. Turn me to gold. I haven't even played the free game. Classic GameList comedy coming at you. Yep. All right. we're at that point where we have reached our games of the year for 2021. 2021 game of the year. By this time, if you're a astute listener, you already know what mine is because I said it was coming up on my list and it hasn't appeared yet. But Collins, you don't know. So let's get to it. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart for old JT and Returnal for Colin. I'm going to let you take it away on Returnal, man. Number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt.
First party PlayStation roguelike?
Yeah, it's insane because this is the first ever roguelike that I've ever played and ever completed.
Shit.
The world is so My dog is eating a tissue in the side right now.
Classic.
The world is so like grungy. It's just, if you watch Alien, that's just the feeling that the world gives you. It almost feels like a Metroid world. I've seen a lot of people compare it to, this is what a modern Metroid game should be, and I completely agree. The environments are beautiful but haunting. They're very Alien. Get it? Alien on a different planet. You know.
Solid.
But the story is actually super interesting. So it's funny because the top 3 games of mine are time loops.
Big loop guy.
Yeah, big loop guy. So Celine crash lands on a planet when she finds a white signal, or like a white fog signal. I don't remember exactly what it was called. But you work your way through 3 biomes to try to get to that signal. And you know, I'm gonna spoil it. So spoiler warnings. You know,
I don't think no, you can get around. Returnal has enough going on, and the story is
bro. But the best part,
I think you've done a great job of no spoilers.
Yeah, you know, you raise a fair point, but let's just say halfway through the game you think you've beat the game. But then you realize you didn't beat the game, and there's still the other half of the game, right?
Interesting.
God, it's so hard to skate around this, but it tells a story, and you expect a resolution, but when you get that resolution, you realize, like, that's not the way out. Like, that's not the way to break the loop. You're fighting for it for hours to break this loop, to escape this planet. But you realize what you're doing is not the way out. So
I'm blown away. Sorry to interrupt. That we're talking so much about story with Returnal as your game of the year, because I thought this would be almost exclusively gameplay. And the story's that good?
Yeah, absolutely. The story is like, and every time you die, you get flashes of more story. So death helps you in the story, and also in progressing in the roguelike, you know, way. But God, my ears itching. There is story. There's a great story. And the ending is kind of up in the air. It's kind of a thing that nobody really knows how to interpret it, which I really like. Sometimes I really like it whenever it's up to interpretation.
2?
That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm begging for.
Interesting.
Also, this game does a great job of, like, representation. I feel like, you know, the main player is like a middle-aged woman, which you don't really see much in games, and I really appreciate that, because it's funny. Anytime I can play a game where I get to choose my gender, I always choose a dude or a girl, because, like, I feel like I play as, like, dudes with, like, beards and, you know, ponytails in every game. But I really like how they
stars of most video games.
Yeah,
change that up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the there's a little, like, horror side to this game, kind of in the environments, but also there's some first person parts of this game. 6 specifically, I think. I think there's a limit of 6 first person areas, and they're kind of scary. They're kind of creepy. But it all plays into the story and what's going on in Celine's mind and where Celine's at. You get to figure out about the alien civilization on the planet that you're at, which I adore. Man, it's 10 out of 10. I adore this game, and I can't wait for a possible sequel or an expansion or literally anything more, because yet again, I have the platinum on it.
The scary parts of the game are what turns me off to it, as already noted. I don't love a scary game.
Yeah.
But when I look at the gameplay, it looks silky fucking smooth.
Oh, it's so smooth.
The case?
Absolutely. It's so smooth. You run so fast, and there are these doors that open right before you get to them, and it's just so pleasing to, like, thread the needle. It feels like you're threading the needle of a door, but it just opens at a perfect time. It is so good. It's so good. And the scary parts, don't let them turn you off, because they're like 3 minutes long each time. It's not that much of the story. It's not that much of the gameplay time in total. It's just little story bits.
Wild. And it comes from Housemarque Entertainment, who's known from like only doing bullet hell like indie games, and then this is their big budget release, and it is an absolute slapper apparently.
And it's a third person bullet hell roguelike. Like they have the bullet hell DNA in there, and it's so pleasing to perfectly dodge like all sorts of little blue and red and orange balls coming at you.
Third person bullet hell horror roguelike. It's like they're trying to make the game
sci-fi
that I would
horror
be least interested in, yet for some reason
it's so good.
I am still interested in playing it, and I honestly do think that I will get around to that one as well. What do you think about, let me just throw that out there. You said these things, third person roguelike from a company that historically puts out indie cheap games. This is a $70 PlayStation 5 game. I think the thing that's holding me back the most, review copy not provided by PlayStation. What do you have to say about that? It warrants a $70 purchase?
Oh, absolutely. Which featured? Without a doubt. There were some things at launch that they had to leave out because there were some technical issues with it, but they're back in now. I actually beat the game before those ever got put back in. And I still think it was worth it then. You can also get it for cheaper than $70 now, but it's only going down. I've only seen it down to like the $50 price point, which I think, is just a telltale sign that it's worth more. It's worth the amount of money that it is. It's going to be one that we look back in a couple of years as a cult classic, like without a doubt.
Love it. Solid pick. Now, we breezed by it. It came in at number 8 for you. For me, number 1 game of the year is Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Now, I feel like I should say I'm a gigantic Ratchet & Clank fan. Ratchet, to me, is probably not quite what Sly is to you, but when we're talking about those Sony platformers from the PS2 era, Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, and Ratchet & Clank, it's Ratchet for me, baby. And this game is, I went back and I streamed it in very, very late 2021. I streamed it in December of 2021 after it became the only video game that I've ever 100% completed and platinumed. It's a game that I played through start to finish, liked it so much that I didn't want it to end, and tried to suck every little bit of life that it had in it out so that I could enjoy every moment that I had with this fucking video game. It doesn't reinvent the wheel. There are games on this list, Before Your Eyes comes to mind, Unpacking comes to mind, that do inventive things with video games and maybe arguably pushes the genre forward, but this is just video game soul food to me. It is just doing everything that Ratchet & Clank has always done to the fucking max, turned up to 11. It is perfect video gaming. I truly feel as if it's a perfect video game. When I rack my brain about what could be different about it, what could they give me to improve it, the only thing that I want is more, is a sequel. And I have searched far and wide for a game that scratches the itch of these old 3D platformers to, make that big step into the future, and this is absolutely it. I mean, gameplay is tight, it's smooth, running absolutely incredibly on PlayStation 5, and it just blows my mind every time I hop back into it. And when I did hop in and restream it, to essentially the title of that stream was ironing out my GOTY list. I wanted to make sure that this was the number 1 game for me, and without a shadow of a doubt, number one by a long shot. What did you think?
Oh, dude, I loved the game. I finished it in a day, like a day's time.
Legend.
Definitely.
Absolute gamer.
Hey, guess what? I got the platinum on this one too.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Wow, imagine that. But no, I love this game.
Have one.
I'm sorry. Maybe next time, maybe next year. But I love this game. Platformers are great. The combat was great. Can I just say the topiary sprinkler was phenomenal? I don't know why I loved it so much.
Those little weird AoE untraditional weapons in this.
Yeah, just super weird things. But this game gives me hope that one day I will get another Sly Cooper, because it shows that there's an audience for these like cartoony platformers.
Without a doubt.
the mascot platformers. There's an audience for them, and this game shows that they can still be good in the 20. I was going to say 21st century, but I guess in 2022 they can still be good games, like and appeal to the masses. They're not something that we left behind in the PS2 era.
Yeah, and I feel like perhaps we've done it a little bit of a disservice talking about how it's just like a gamer-ass game that doesn't reinvent the wheel, but there are subtle things that they've added to the game to make it, kind of stand up to the times. I think that the addition of the dash is fucking huge. It feels like it was always there. In the same way that I talked about Psychonauts 1 kind of looks the way that I picture Psychonauts 2. Or, I'm sorry, Psychonauts 2 looks the way that I picture Psychonauts 1 in my head. It feels like I've always had that dash in the Ratchet & Clank games. But going back now to the older ones and not having it, it feels so slow. It really has, I don't want to say it's ruined the old Ratchet & Clanks for me, but it is the new standard of Ratchet and Clank. We touched briefly on that, the topiary sprinkler that you were talking about. The weapons in this game, more so than the other Ratchet and Clank games, are fucking fantastic. The variety of weapons has always been there for Ratchet and Clank, but what I found in those old games was that I'd gravitate towards a handful of weapon. My wheel would kind of just max out, and I'd say, okay, this is what I use. I'd maybe get one and cycle it in for something that I had at the beginning of the game. But I think that I used every single weapon in this game. Maybe there were a couple that I didn't use all that much, but goddamn, every single thing just clicked. It was absolutely perfect start to finish. It just, it's gaming bliss.
And they did a good job of putting the ammo capacity for certain weapons low enough to where you have to change and you have to experiment. And it was just, it wasn't so much that it felt like I was running out of ammo every other second, but it was enough to make me want to experiment with other weapons and just see what it can do.
Yeah, and I found myself in those situations where I would be in like a lengthy fight or some sort of arena or something like that, and I'd be down to 2 or 3 weapons with everything else exhausted of ammo. So it's just, I think, speaks to the balancing of the game, really. First and foremost is that it feels like such a tight package. The progression is right where it needs to be. The levels are varied. We haven't even talked about the story, which I think is honestly as good as Ratchet and Clank has ever been. The characters are written well. They introduced 2 brand new characters. One of them is honestly a spoiler in itself. The fact that they kept it under wraps, didn't put it in the marketing at all, and they still really haven't talked about it. You're able to hop into this game if you haven't played it and be introduced to something that will probably end up being a cornerstone of the Ratchet and Clank franchise going forward, and it's barely touched upon.
And they did a really good job in introducing those new characters. Lots of times you don't like new characters, but those were both 2 really likable characters. One more so than the other, but
for sure. But I think I think for a very long time, since Toy Story came out in 1996, it's always just been this drive to every year a new game comes out. You're like, oh, it feels like you're playing a Pixar movie. How many times have you heard that?
Dude, I was just thinking that
they did it. They did it. You're looking at gameplay right now. This game is like playing a Pixar movie. It really looks as good in its cutscenes as it does in its gameplay, and it is a visual feast. Not to mention how fun it is to control. The fact that you have the ability to make things happen in this world that looks as good as it does.
Yep. For sure, without a doubt. I was literally just sitting here thinking, I'm watching the gameplay right now, and I'm just like, wow, I forgot how beautiful this game is. It looks like an animated movie. It's just perfect.
It's fucking mind blowing. Mind blowing. Chat, listeners, viewers, that's the list, but the fun doesn't end here. I got more slides of shit that we missed, so we'll just run through a couple things. That we kind of have as not quite superlatives. They're just additions. The thing that I think that we must touch on is our honorable mentions. So let's just run through these. Let's not give any of them the amount of time that we gave to our actual top 10 list. Let's just run through some of the things that didn't quite make the list. And there's some overlap here that I had on my list that's on Kaulin's list here, and I don't think there's any overlap the other way. And I'm going to call this half the stuff that you see under me for my honorable mentions. If you're listening to this, I'll rattle these off. My honorable mentions are what I'm going to coin the Nintendo Wall of Shame. I am a gigantic first-party Nintendo fan. If you're listening and you can't see this, behind me are Mario posters for 64, Galaxy, and Sunshine. Up in the corner, I've got all sorts of Pokemon and Zelda stuff. Yet, not a single one cracked my top 10 this year, because honestly, Nintendo didn't impress me this year, which it pains me to say. And all of the games on this list are either remakes or rehashes or reinventions of existing series that just came up short. And we'll get to our stinker shortly, which you'll see. Unfortunately for me, is also a Nintendo game. But my list is new Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, Mario Party Superstars, Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, and Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. Kaulin, talk to me a little bit about yours and rattle off your 5.
So I got A Short Hike, which, we'll talk about it more in depth in a minute, maybe. Back for Blood, which, was good, but I didn't touch it after I finished the campaign. Scarlet Nexus, which was on my top 10 originally, but got pushed down after I played more games. Great game. Play it. Forza Horizon 5, adore that game, but I need to play more of it. I haven't finished it yet.
Yeah.
And then Metroid Dread, same thing. Just haven't finished it yet. I'm enjoying it, loving it, love the environment, very similar to Returnal. Just haven't finished it yet.
Metroid is on my honorable mentions as well, as is Forza Horizon 5. Back for Blood is on my nothing list, despite having actually given it a fair shake. The game didn't do it for me. Talk to me about Scarlet Nexus.
So Scarlet Nexus is, I would consider it a stylish action RPG. Kind of in the lines or in the veins of like Astral Chain, maybe even Bayonetta. I don't know. It's not made by Platinum. It's a Bandai Namco studio. I don't know exactly which studio. But it's following these two teenagers. It's a very anime game, by the way. So if you're not an anime person, you won't like it. Yeah, very anime. You follow these two teenagers through some weird thing where you're fighting weird monsters, and there's like time travel and loops, and it's just all sorts of weird. But it's a really fun game.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We'll back and forth a little bit. I'll talk about a couple of mine where I feel like I don't need to really talk that much about Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. It's a rehash, remake, pretty faithful to the originals. Glad to have them, not doing anything that special for me. Maybe one of the bigger disappointments on this list for me is Skyward Sword HD, which is now the best way to play Skyward Sword. But as I progressed through that game, I could not stop thinking throughout all of the gameplay mechanics. There's this mental barrier I have of like motion controls, and I get it. They took the motion controls out, but everything just feels like a sidestep around. It's like, okay, we put ourselves into this motion control corner, and now we want to bring this game to people that aren't going to use motion controls. How are we going to do it? And it just can't get it out of my mind. It doesn't feel fluid. It feels like I am adapting to control a game the way that it wasn't meant to be played, and the way that it was meant to be played does not appeal to me. Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury is a fantastic video game, a fantastic package. Out of my 5, it's the one that was actually on my list that got bumped out as something else got added, I think Psychonauts, because the Bowser's Fury standalone, which is arguably like a DLC type of package, is a really fun 3D Mario adventure, and the original Mario 3D World is very, very good. What about A Short Hike? I don't know much about that. Isometric view, Breath of the Wild inspired?
Yeah, kind of. It has the climbing mechanics of Breath of the Wild. So I guess anything with those climbing mechanics or Breath of the Wild inspired. But it's exactly what the name says. It's a short hike up a mountain to get cell service. It's super cute, has great music. I also got to platinum on it. And you play as a little bird that you can fly around. You can just glide down the mountain. And you can also turn like your pixelated slider up and down, so you can have like a super pixelated look, or you can have like the smooth like Wind Waker type look to it. But it's a really, really fun game, cute game, just a nice, relaxing, simple, cute game.
Love it. Looks really cool. Looks pleasant in its length. You said short.
Oh yeah, very short. Like to beat it, maybe 3 hours.
Nice. That's an easy afternoon knockout for me.
Yeah.
Mario Party Superstars is the game that I've played probably the most on my list of honorable mentions. It is the best Mario Party ever created, but still has built its empire on the bones of something that's about 20 years old. Fantastic online multiplayer as far as the Switch standard goes. And then New Pokemon Snap is a game I wanted so dearly, and I do love and enjoy, but very rarely do I clamor for a remake or a sequel as much as I did for Pokemon Snap, and then for it to come out and for me to just kind of be lukewarm on it is a little depressing. And I don't know what they could have done better. I think that maybe that it pains me to fucking say out loud that maybe Pokemon Snap was better left in the past. Oh, don't tune out. This is the first episode. Please stay. Metroid Dread, I only played the demo of, and then I watched a lot of gameplay online. And it seems right up my alley. It's getting an honorable mention for me because I need some actual time with that game, but I think it's probably something that I'll be very, very keen on completing once I get there. What did we brush over on your list was Forza Horizon 5, which I also have a decent amount of time. What did you think overall?
Oh, I loved it. I loved the one night that we all spent playing together. That was probably the highlight of that game for me. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it, and I mean it's a racing game. It's the best racing game there is right now. So
yeah, for sure. I couldn't have it on the list when Cruisin Blast is so high up on my list, which it's such sacrilege to say, like, arguably the best reviewed game of the year, Forza Horizon 5, to me is just not as fun as I have playing Cruisin Blast. Fuck it.
We just have to pretend that Forza doesn't exist for you, so that way you don't feel ashamed for putting Cruisin.
Nothing can stop my shame. All right, let's get to our stinkers of the year. Oh,
stinker!
Pain is me. So stinker of the year is the game that I wanted the most to like and just didn't. It came up short. I had high hopes for Mario Golf Super Rush. Kaulin's pick is Far Cry 6. Maybe you're in the same boat as me. I had played all the Mario Golfs. I was so excited that we're finally getting a Mario Golf. The fact that Mario Golf was as successful as it was, and Nintendo invented a system that had a controller that was motion-based and looked like the fucking handle of a golf club and didn't put Mario Golf on it is still a fucking mind-blower to me. And they put out Mario Golf Super Rush, which is, I think the best way I could describe it is like a neutered version of Super Mario Golf. It fucking takes away the swing mechanic that we had come to expect from the Mario Golf series. It added a huge component of the game being this kind of real-time golf where you controlled your character to get to your ball, and I just didn't need any of this shit. I just wanted to hit the A button 3 times to swing the selected club to get the ball closer to the hole, and then do it again 17 more times. And it tried to do too much and didn't do enough. Really, really hurt. Where did Far Cry 6 come up short for you?
I think your last sentence of it tried to do too much and didn't do enough explains Far Cry 6 almost perfectly. I just got lost in that game, man. It feels so cluttered with all the stuff that you're overwhelmed with. Naturally, it's a Ubisoft game, so you're absolutely just bombarded with things to do, settlements to clear out, towers to climb, and all this stuff to check off a checklist, which I normally really like. I like checking stuff off a checklist.
Traditional Ubisoft open world.
Yeah, but something about this game just felt like tight. I don't know if it was like the FOV that was tighter than normal or something, but it honestly made me feel like claustrophobic when I was playing it. So I haven't gone back to finish it. I will at some point. But this was the game that I expected to load up and be sucked into for a couple days. But I ended up loading it up and not playing it for a couple weeks and then loading it up again and then haven't touched it since.
I know what you're saying about that like intent to go back to on those Ubisoft games, because you really do have to be in the mood. It happened to me last year with Valhalla, or 2 years ago, last holiday season, where I was excited. I played Odyssey, I played Origins, and I got into Valhalla, and I was like, just not really in the mood for it right now. I'm not opposed to the game, didn't hate it or anything like that, but goddamn, I just need to be in the right mood to have that many things to check off of a fucking list.
Yeah. Yeah, I spent like 130 hours in Valhalla, so
Jesus Christ.
Just checking off to get to platinum. I've done none of the DLC, surprisingly enough.
Yep.
But
a classic.
Yeah.
The last thing that we have to cover is our misses. We're not saying that these are bad games, we're not saying that they're good games, we're saying that in comparison to most GOTY conversations, we don't really have an opinion on them. And there are some games on here that I certainly want to check out, and they could change in time. Believe me, if we end up getting to them, you'll hear about them on future episodes. This is, of course, episode 0.
Yep.
There's one on here that I think you've played a little bit of, and other than that, I think we're pretty much riding blind. All right. So the one that you've actually touched is Kena Bridge of Spirits. Into it, or...
I actually love it until I get to puzzles, and then I get frustrated, and then I turn it off, and I don't touch it for a couple weeks. Then I go back, figure out the puzzle, and repeat. I love the game. I hate the puzzles. It's just something about those puzzles, man.
Kena feels like a PS2 game made for modern consoles, and I can't believe I didn't get to it this year. I think in the same way that like I was kind of like, all right, Returnal $70, I felt a little bit like, all right, Kena $40. You feel like a game that I would pick up on sale for $4, like Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy.
I don't know, man. It's worth more than $4.
I know. And it's certainly something I'm going to play and probably love. Chicory, any experience?
None at all. Haven't touched it.
Top-down
Probably
Zelda-like game, right up my alley. I actually bought it with intent to play, and it sits upon my Switch untouched. Inscription, card-based battler.
Deck
Spooky
builder,
vibes.
not my thing.
Kind of my thing. Spooky vibes, not really my thing. I've seen a decent amount of it played. Seems very cool. Probably would get a nod if I had spent the time on it, or if perhaps it was... themed differently.
I like the spooky vibes, just not the deck building aspect.
It's interesting. The spooky stuff that they're doing is kind of the coolest thing about it. Monster Hunter Rise, just not into the series. I understand that it's probably the best version of Monster Hunter out there. Recently got ported to PC as well, and people are loving that, but just not something I've explored myself. Outer Wilds, we'll get to it. I think at this point, next week we'll be talking about Outer Wilds in depth, and the merits of the first part of that game, and then from what I understand, Echoes of the Eye, unfortunately a bit horror themed comparatively to the initial game.
Should we both agree to have played Echoes of the Eye by this time next week?
I need more time. Here's my thing about Outer Wilds right now as it sits, is it's such a complete, fantastic package that sits in my mind. The only thing that I can think of is how I wish I could play Outer Wilds again for the first time at some point in my life. So I think I want to let it simmer, and then
play Echoes later. When
I've got this, lying in wait. I have this thing that I just know I'm going to adore, to explore another time. But believe me, we will, and probably within the next 365. Last one's Call of Duty Vanguard, the first Call of Duty that I haven't touched since ever. Ever. I played all of the other ones.
This is the only one I haven't played.
Sign of the times, man. Sign of the times.
Microsoft property. Just wait till they revive it and figure it all out.
When it hits Game Pass, I'll give it the old fair shake.
It's gonna be Call of Duty Micro. I don't know. I was gonna make a micro hard joke or something. I got nothing. Just sign me off. I give up.
Hey, that's a show. That's a podcast. This was super fun. Kaulin, obviously, I think I personally, this has exceeded my expectations on how smooth it went. I hope for anybody that's watching the video version or caught this live, special shout out to you, the people that are sitting here ever so quiet in chat, being slightly ignored, but ever so loved. Thank you to anybody that listens to this, that watches this. My hope is that nobody watches this for like a month or two, and we work the kinks out, and then you're watching this like 5 years in the future, and you're like, let me watch the first thing that they ever did together.
Wow, this is bad.
Now, and you're like, all right, well, they came a long way. That's my hope for the future. But in that 5-year on future, I hope we are knocking it out of the park still. Really, really fun. Any closing thoughts? Anything that we missed? Anything that we have to say? I guess.
Oh man, I think I've said. Yeah. Oh God, I should have prepared my handles, man.
Do your plugs.
You
got them. Just rattle them off.
I gotta shout out my Twitter. I never shout out my
Jake
Twitter.
Twitchin on fucking everything. I locked that shit down. It's Jake Twitchin, like twitching, but without a G. Jake Twitchin. I stream on Twitch a lot of nights a week. On Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm, a little bit everywhere. The cat in the background is Richard. The dog in his background is Corvo.
Yeah, Corvo.
Hit me with those socials.
All right, so Twitch, obviously, find me at Kaulin, Kauline _. Somebody stole Kaulin without the underscore, so I'm really pissed about that. Yeah. Okay. Twitter is Kaulin, Kaulin D, capital D. You'll see a picture of me at the Game Awards. We can talk about that in the future. Yeah. And then YouTube is just Kaulin, Kauline. No underscore, nothing. I've really got to consolidate my stuff, but it's really difficult because, funnily enough, Kaulin is like taken. I don't know.
All the Jakes were taken too, so if it's any consolation, I had to come up with something new. Classic. This was really fun. Thank you guys all for being here. That is our show. We'll be back next week with our actual episode 1, talking about all the big news from January 2022 and what we've been playing. See you soon.
Bye.